Okay, welcome back everyone to my video podcast on the future of business and technology. And today's topic is the most in-demand skills. We now live in a world where artificial intelligence is reshaping the global workforce, and Coursera's latest job skills report reveals a seismic shift in learning patterns. So today I'm sitting down once more with Coursera CEO Jeff Maggioncalda and to discuss the most in-demand technical and soft skills for career success in an AI-powered world. Welcome back, Jeff.
Hey, Bernard, great to see you again. Thanks for having me.
So tell me a little bit more about Coursera's job skills report and how you compile it and what does it cover?
Yeah, what we basically do, it's interesting at Coursera, we have a direct-to-consumer business that the company started with the MOOC revolution in 2012, where individuals can come directly to the Coursera website and take whatever courses they want, and they pay for the certifications. But around 2015, 2016, we started offering Coursera to institutions. We started with Coursera for Business in about 2015 or 16. Coursera for Government was in 2017. And then Coursera for Campus, which is for students, that was in 2018 that we launched that. We now have about half of our active enrollments from learners who are in organizations, people who are employees of companies, who are citizens of countries, who are students in universities. And what this report does is it really looks at not necessarily what are the popular skills. They don't change; those don't change as much, but really what are the trending skills. So it looks at skills, it looks at skills ranks, and it does this for businesses, for governments, and for campuses. And then it says which skills moved the most in the rankings, and those are the skills that really get featured. And I think it's kind of interesting because there's a lot of coverage about what's popular. There's a little bit less coverage around what's moving. And what's fascinating is part of what's moving in terms of skills that are becoming more popular. Part of it is just learner interest generally. But part of it, as you'll see when we go through this report, reflects organizations' interests in skills that they want employees to develop. And we're seeing a huge trend across businesses to what many are calling skills-based organizations, where the organization really provides a lot of guidance on the kinds of skills that they want people in certain roles to have.
Yeah, that is super interesting. So I'd love to dive into this in a bit more detail. And not really that surprisingly, generative AI has increased. People want to upskill in this area. In 2024, I think you saw an 866% spike compared to the year before. Do you think this is an indication that organizations are moving fast enough on AI upskilling, or does the pace need to increase even further?
Well, I've been really surprised at how slow organizations have been in getting their arms around generative AI. When we first started using it at Coursera in December of 2022, we jumped all over it. We really, really move fast. Part of it is because we're an ed tech company, and we know that generative AI is going to change media. It's going to change videos and audio and text and all that kind of stuff. So there'll be entirely new ways to learn and entirely new ways to teach because of generative AI. So I'm not surprised that we jumped earlier, but I really expected organizations to move much faster than they are. And I think that, and by the way, many surveys say that individual employees and individual students are using ChatGPT and other generative AI tools far more quickly than the companies are training them. That students and employees want more training. That they're not even sure in many cases whether their institutions want them to be using generative AI, or is that cheating in your job, or is that cheating in your class? And so I think organizations, not surprisingly, there's a lot of nuance and a lot of facets to this question of generative AI. And what we're seeing is organizations are being fairly deliberate. Understandably, they're saying, okay, first of all, legally and from a regulatory perspective, what do we need to know? Second of all, like the leaders are saying, strategy. What does this mean for our business model? How should leaders approach this? To a large degree, learners, individual people are adopting these courses fastest in generative AI. And then beyond that, teams are adopting it faster than the overall organization. And we're just now starting to see that the big consulting projects in generative AI from McKinsey and Bain and BCG and others are turning into implementation of training programs. So it has been a number of years, since ChatGPT was released, and only now are we seeing the strategic projects turning into skilling and upskilling projects. So we're getting there, but it's been pretty slow.
Yeah, I completely agree, and there's still I'm as surprised as you in terms of how little guidance organizations give their employees of what they can and can't do. I think some of this is happening now, but I see a big difference between organizations that have really embraced it and put guardrails in place, and where everyone knows what they can do with it and how they can use it, and they provide training compared to the ones that don't.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
what kind of Gen AI courses are people taking? And are there any particular geographies or age ranges that stand out to you? And do you see any gaps in usage that need addressing?
Yeah. So probably not surprisingly, um, well, I'll say before this, we've had AI courses on Coursera since 2012. I mean, literally one of the first courses on Coursera ever that kind of launched Coursera was called Machine Learning, and it was a course taught by our founder Andrew Ng at Stanford. So it was called Stanford Machine Learning, and that kind of put Coursera on the map way back in the day. Now, machine learning evolved, and Andrew produced another specialization, 5 courses called deep learning, which is a technique for neural network development. But historically, we've had hundreds of courses, about I'd say 700 courses on AI for the people who build AI. It was the people who build AI. Generally speaking, our AI courses were for the builders. But with generative AI, there's now a much, much larger population of people who are not learning how to build the models, they're learning how to use the models. So I call this, generative AI for builders and generative AI for users. And so when you think about popularity, most of the most popular generative AI courses are for the users. I'll mention a number of those. Some of them are for the builders, but there just aren't as many builders out there. But when you look at a lot of the skills that are the rankings that are moving fast, a lot of these builder skills are moving pretty fast because the demand for people who really deeply know how to build these models is very high. So here are the top 10 courses in generative AI on Coursera so far in 2024. Number 1, Google AI Essentials. This is a basic literacy course on how to, what is AI and how to use it. Number 2 is Introduction to Generative AI from Google Cloud. 3 is Generative AI for Everyone from Deep Learning. 4 is Prompt Engineering for ChatGPT from Vanderbilt University. 5 is Generative AI with Large Language Models, which is Amazon Web Services, AWS. And so what you see here is the first 4 are all kind of introductory, like what is this thing and how do I write a prompt for the users. 5 from AWS, it's a little bit of blend. It's not going to teach you this AWS course called Generative AI with Large Language Models. It won't teach you how to build one, but it will definitely explain how these things work. And it's fascinating. I've taken it. It's really, really good. Okay, 6 is Generative AI Prompt Engineering Basics from IBM. 7 is Generative AI Introduction and Applications from IBM. 8 is ChatGPT Prompt Engineering for Developers. This is from Deep Learning, which is Andrew's learning company. This is the first one that you see here, and there's a rising class of courses because we just launched what we call Generative AI for Teams. And what this is are job-specific courses that teach people how to use various AI tools to increase the quality and the speed, efficiency of their work in a certain job role. So using generative AI as a software developer is very different than using generative AI for a marketer in many ways. And so we're starting to see some of these role-specific courses become some of the popular ones. It says number 9 is ChatGPT Advanced Data Analysis. So this is from Vanderbilt. This is a little bit more for data analysts. And then we have number 10 is Build Basic Generative Adversarial Networks from Deep Learning. So this is really for the builders. So you can see a smattering of general purpose AI courses, role-specific AI courses, a little bit of an intro on a technical intro on how these things work. And then there's definitely some courses on for the builders, like how do you build these things. And altogether now we have about 500 generative AI titles on Coursera, and over 1,000 on AI overall.
Yeah, this is it's fascinating to see some of these shifts, especially around prompt engineering. So, moving from people that build AI to people using it in their day-to-day jobs. And
Yep.
your report notes that prompt engineering courses have spiked in popularity among job seekers and students.
Mhm.
How advantageous are these skills amongst new job seekers, particularly those entering the market?
Well, for sure, over 70% of leaders surveyed by LinkedIn, this was last year, said that they'd rather hire a new person who had less experience and knew how to use generative AI than someone who had more experience and did not know how to use generative AI. And basically, generative AI fluency is for the most part a prerequisite for most jobs these days. I mean, it's almost like a language skill or a math skill or how to use an Excel spreadsheet. It's like you need to have these skills just to do your job. I often say that generative AI is an important skill for anyone who thinks, anyone who makes decisions, and anyone who communicates. I hope that that's everybody. I mean, because if you're not doing those 3 things, then you're definitely going to get replaced by some kind of a bot. But I think what people don't really realize, and I have a course on this called Using Generative AI as Your Thought Partner. It's a general purpose course that really does talk about how the basic skill of interacting with a large language model is fundamentally a different process with different kinds of skills than using a search engine. A lot of people use generative AI as a search engine. And originally it wasn't very good at that at all. Now it's becoming much better because it's essentially doing this retrieval augmented generation where it finds web pages and then summarizes them. So I think as a search engine, it is getting much better. But where generative AI is really a valuable skill for every single person who works, and I can see it at Coursera, I can see it when I teach people, I can see the feedback in my course. People who really understand how to use these models are able to not only retrieve factual information, and that's generally what a search engine does. It retrieves information. It's not unlike going to a library and checking out a book. I mean, it's a much easier and faster way to do it. But what generative AI does is fundamentally different. In the greater arc of human technology, I like to say, like, where does this fit in? I think generative AI is right up there with the greatest technology innovations that humans have ever created. Starting 350,000 years ago with language. Like language, the ability to communicate ideas, arguably is the thing that made humans as a species so successful. Is the ability to communicate ideas and share ideas. Writing, like the alphabet and writing, was a massive breakthrough because it allows you to not just communicate ideas, but convey ideas across space and time. The printing press democratized ideas. The microprocessor allows you to digitize ideas by turning analog alphabets into digital ones that allow you to store and retrieve them. But what generative AI does is allows you to transform ideas. You can take an idea 1 and an idea 2, and you can combine them, and you can do iterations of them. And you can say, I'm thinking this, what would somebody else think? Or look at this story. I'm reading this article, this is a point of view from Bernard. I have this point of view, and I want you to help me think about where are they the same and where are they different, and what parts of that article that Bernard wrote should I be thinking about incorporating in my point of view? Or how is my point of view perhaps more limited or perhaps more advanced than what Bernard is saying? So using these larger language models to transform thought is critical. And at least at Coursera, I expect all of our employees to understand how to use generative AI as a cognitive tool, as a thinking tool. And I think every single position, everything, even a carpenter should know how to use generative AI as a thought partner.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I love the way you describe how you're using it and how you expect everyone else at Coursera to use it, because I think this is where the real value comes from when you use it as a as your I call it my genie that sits on my shoulders that I interact with and bounce off ideas. And yeah, so powerful. And I think we both agree that people need to learn as much as they can about AI and Gen AI and maybe agentic AI and quantum AI as we move forward. But what I found interesting is that in your report, it also highlights it's not just AI related skills, but it's also what you call human skills that have increased. So can you tell me more about this and why you believe this is the case?
Yeah, and again, these are the movers, right? So these are the skills. We have a Coursera skills graph, which is basically a taxonomy of skills. That's sort of a hierarchical listing where you have big skills like communication or Python, and then within that you have smaller skills that kind of roll up to it. And so we look at these skills at different granularities. We have thousands of skills in this taxonomy. And when you say which of these skills are increasing in popularity the fastest, so it's not the most popular skills, but it's the fastest advancing skills, or the ones that are becoming more popular the fastest. Here's the overall ranking globally: is generative AI is number one, HR technology is two, risk mitigation and control is three, assertiveness is four, threat management and modeling is five, incident management and response is six, stakeholder communication is seven, security information and event management is eight, business communication is nine, and network planning and design is 10. Now, these are, again, skills that are moving, and these are only skills in institutions. So on the consumer side, this might not be exactly the same. But what you notice about this list is a few things. I'd say the overall theme is skills that help you adapt to change. Certainly opportunities, but notably threats and challenges. They seem like the biggest skills. HR technology. Well, you have a workforce that is moving much faster, becoming remote, becoming more distributed globally. And by the way, when you're global and when you're remote, guess what happens, right? You have more data security threats. So you have a lot of risk mitigation and control, threat management and modeling, incident management and response, business information and event management. So there's a lot about how do I do a prudent job managing a diverse and highly dynamic workforce. And then on the soft skills, as you mentioned, there's assertiveness, there's stakeholder communication, there's business communication. A lot of what this is about, in my opinion, is change management. It's really difficult as a leader in these days of what some people call VUCA, volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. Leading a group through rapid periods of change that are probably not going to slow down is a massive leadership challenge for managers and leaders together. And understanding how you communicate to stakeholders and how you communicate to your colleagues is a really big part of it. So a lot of this is about, like, the fastest growing skills in institutions are those skills that help you adapt to change.
Yeah, I very much agree, and I describe our current era as an era of hyper innovation, and where we see accelerated innovation in all areas, where AI pushes innovation in so many other fields. And I can't see any time that this will slow down. So this ability to adopt and to change will become even more important in the future.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
is and I also believe that with the increasing power of AI, our human skills and our soft skills will become even more important. In my book on the future skills, I cover 20 skills and 16 of them are soft
Yeah.
skills. So I'm interested to see how this will evolve over the years, that we'll hopefully see a bigger focus on the skills that make us truly human, and then we then become really good partners that are able to leverage AI to help us achieve the things that we need to achieve in the world.
Yeah, it was interesting. Yesterday I spent 11 hours with one of my colleagues on the strategy team working through a strategic opportunity that we're looking at. And it was interesting because we went to a physical place. We mostly do remote work, but it's hard to keep your attention for that much time,
Mm.
and there's a lot of latency. So we went to a physical space. We went to a WeWork, and we had multiple AI models on both of our machines going, and it was kind of like we had a group of maybe 6 people in this little. It was only 2 humans, but we had many different AI models running different scenarios. We came prepared for this all-day workshop with prompts, context prompts. We had an idea of what we were going to be asking, and so it's like we had multiple people in the room with us, and we were asking a question. So I agree with you. There's a lot of what this is about is organizational change and adaptability and teamwork, like the soft skills to do that. At the same time, for like raw brain power, understanding how generative AI can kind of be one of your at least thinking partners on your team is really valuable. And it was interesting the way he and I were using our models sort of as a team. Like I'd be like, all right, you start putting the context prompt together. I'll be doing this, and then I'd be up at the whiteboard. He was taking pictures of the things I was drawing, putting them into the LLM model, asking it to generate a prompt. We voice recorded the whole thing, so we have a transcript. We're going to then use AI to narrow down that transcript, partly to give other people an idea of what we talked about, but also as context prompt for others that will want access to that kind of context when they use LLM. So it is a really interesting world that we're moving into where the human skills of collaboration are massive, but those humans also have to understand how does generative AI contribute to the
Yeah.
teamwork that's happening among a group of humans.
Yeah, very true. What other skills stand out in the report, and maybe what does this tell us about the changing skills landscape that you are seeing?
Yeah, I'd say in the UK in particular, there's generative AI tools is a really big one. Like how to use Copilot, how to use Gemini, how do you use various tools like Writer .ai, like tools for different job roles seems to be huge. And I think
Mm.
what this really reflects is yes, everybody needs to learn sort of fluency and using AI as generative AI as a thought partner, which is a little bit of a cross-cutting skill. We saw the early stages of generative AI for leaders and sort of generative AI for everyone, but now we're seeing a lot bigger interest on generative AI for specific team roles.
Mm.
And I think a big part of this is many companies are looking for the productivity unlock. They're looking to say, how can my software developers write better code faster, that's better documented and easier to maintain by using generative AI to help them write the code. And so we're seeing a lot more interest in people creating courses on how to use generative AI for productivity in specific job roles, and also organizations steering their teams towards those productivity oriented, job role based generative AI courses. So that's one. There's a lot on cybersecurity and risk management. There's
Mm.
just a lot more data that people are using in the way they do their work. Like yesterday when we were doing this, we had massive amounts of data, and we were running these models mostly through private instances of models that were not available to the public.
Mm.
There's a big set of skills on network and systems management. And I think that reflects digital transformation in a global dynamic workforce. There's a lot on workforce development, which is the soft skills part of that, and then just general business intelligence and analytics. Trying to stay on top of change. That is really a tricky thing. Is like, how do you see the change coming, and then how do you manage to adapt to that change?
Yeah, and change is the key word here that is happening. So I'd love to get your predictions. We're now at the beginning of a new year.
Mhm.
In 2025, what do you think we will see regarding AI upskilling?
Yeah. I think a few things. I think that finally in 2025, and we're seeing it now at the tail end of 2024, organizations, institutions, especially businesses, they are they are they are now in a position where I think they have thought about it, they have assessed their risks, they have in many cases they've put in the tooling, like safe infrastructure where you can responsibly use AI without breaching your data security governance and appropriating IP and things like that. And now it is much more towards, all right, training people to do this. The other thing I'll say is compared to 2 years ago, the models are much better. And we knew this at Coursera, that every time the models got better, the need to learn generative AI would become more urgent and more critical. And so as you go from GPT 3.5 to 4 to 4.0 to O1 to O1 Pro, which is what a lot of us are using now at Coursera, the capabilities are just way better, and so the value of learning it is higher. So I think that finally in 2025, people won't just be talking about generative AI in companies, and they won't be just setting strategies. They'll actually be implementing strategies and looking for business benefit, and they realize skilling people is absolutely required. Like, you will not get the benefits of generative AI if you don't skill people on how to use it. So that's kind of prediction number one, is companies will start actually getting the value of generative AI by training their people to implement their strategies. Another one is, when you look at the top 10 countries in terms of Gen AI enrollments on Coursera, the number one country in the world for course enrollments, take a guess what it is.
I don't know the user profile of it, but
It's India.
is it? Yeah, that's not surprising. Yeah.
Among all countries, it's India, followed by the US, Canada, the UK. 5 is Colombia, 6 is Germany, 7 is Pakistan, 8 is Mexico, 9 is Brazil, and 10 is Spain. So it's pretty interesting. And so this is my second big trend: global talent, the globalization of talent. I think that generative AI is it's sort of a fresh start. And there's a lot of people in emerging economies who are learning these skills and will become more productive than people in more developed economies. And not only are they more productive, they're often highly adaptable learners, and often a lot less expensive, at least for now, in terms of wages and compensation. So I think that more and more companies will be tapping into Gen AI skilled labor pools globally than what we saw before. Another thing, by the way, that's going to promote this is different regions and different countries are embracing different postures on generative AI regulation. Europe being one of the most conservative in the world. The US, not the least conservative, but generally pretty aggressive in innovation. I think what's going to happen is that companies are going to realize that they not only need skilled talent, they need skilled talent who have access to the most recent models, know how to use those most recent models to be more productive workers. And so I think that companies in Europe will continue to look overseas for talent, because the talent is, up on the latest skills, has the access to the cognitive tools, the thinking tools that they need to be productive, and in many cases are very economical in terms of productivity and wage rates.
Yeah, they're super interesting predictions, and I agree with them.
Now, I don't know if it's going to be in 2025, but one more sort of theme, and it's, again, it has not happened as quickly as I thought, but I still think this is likely, is you're going to go toward, from a world where everyone's talking about AI to a world where people are strategizing about AI. And then I think you're going to start seeing some will implement it and really separate from the pack, and others will just continue to kind of experiment. They'll just stay with experimentation. But I think after experimentation, you're going to start seeing separation. Some companies will start doing really interesting things. And then you're going to go towards this idea of, oh my gosh, emergency, we need to train our people. And if a group of employees cannot learn how to do their jobs differently using generative AI, I think those functions will get outsourced to people who can do those functions. So I think it might be the case that a lot of the large consulting firms, the big strategic consulting firms, the Accentures and the PwCs and the KPMGs, they're, I think, going to do very well, because they will run essentially managed talent marketplaces, global marketplaces on behalf of companies whose own workforces cannot keep up with the rate of change.
Interesting. So last time we spoke, we talked about how you are using generative AI in your role as a CEO, and you've touched on this today, that you you had a session yesterday where you used it as your thought partner.
Yep.
I'd love to know how this has evolved for you, and have there been any interesting or new ways you are using the technology? And I highly recommend anyone who wants to go back to our conversation, because I found this super fascinating. Just go to my YouTube channel where you can find that. But how has this evolved?
Surprisingly, not a whole lot. I mean, the models are getting better. The context windows are getting bigger. So I can process a lot more information. I'm kind of using the same approach, which is using it as a thought partner. But it's just the capabilities are much, much better. So one of the things I've actually stopped doing is I'm using AI less in writing emails than I used to.
Mhm.
Just because I don't know, you can kind of see when an email is written by AI, and even if it has the content that you want to express, it lacks a certain, I don't know, personal touch.
Mm.
And so for low stakes emails, I won't use AI. I kind of want it to be a little bit sloppy, a little bit messy, just so people know, like, yeah, it's a little bit like writing a card instead of
Mm.
sending an email. It's like I spent the time to write a card. Like these are really just my thoughts. For high stakes emails, I always run it through AI. Like if it's really important that my communication is very clear, it is coherent, it's as short as possible, and I can anticipate how different audiences might react to it, I run it through AI. I'll often then edit it and make it still a little bit personalized. It always starts with my substance, but then it often makes it more coherent and more concise. And then I'll add, and sometimes it makes it a little bit more anodyne, and then I'll make it a little bit more personalized. But I'm actually using it. I'm using AI a little bit less to write emails. I'm using it a lot more as a thought partner. And another thing I'm doing is when someone sends a piece of work to me, like a presentation or whatever, I will often run that piece of work through AI. The way I think about it, I'm like, I'll ask the AI questions about that piece of work, and then I'll give that back to the employee, and I'll say, look, here are the key questions I think about your work, and here is, and I'll just I'll share a link to my chat, and I'll be like, here is my interaction with your work using AI, so that you can see, not only what do I and my little thinking tool think about your work and what suggestions do I have, but you can learn how to use it, at least based on, in some part degree, the way that I use it. So I'm trying to also educate other people about how you can use this, and I generally tell people, I expect people to run their work through AI before I see it. I rarely see a piece of work that is better without AI than when you use AI responsibly. So I'm really trying to foster adoption and creativity. And part of that too is understanding how the models are changing and how you can keep up and exploit it in new ways because of the model capabilities that are enhancing.
Yeah, there are fascinating ways to use this technology when you start recording your conversations. You talked about that you voice recorded your strategic conversation, and then use this as a basis for more prompts and to train the AI to learn what you've discussed, what you haven't discussed. I think these are fascinating ways people are now using these technologies.
Yeah, because especially for things like corporate strategy, thank goodness, most of our corporate strategy is now not out on the internet. And so just using ChatGPT without any context grounding, you just don't get as much value because there's not private context. But when
Mm,
you're doing a lot of work on strategy and you want people to not only understand what the strategy is, but you want them to relate what they're doing to the corporate strategy, you want to give them a context prompt so that they can say, hey, GPT 4.0 or whatever model, here's our strategy. Now, I'm working on this project. Tell me how I can further that strategy by virtue of the way that I'm working on the project, or tell me the ways in which my project can drive that strategy or should be different or adjusted because of that strategy. So it's not just something you learn in your own brain. As a context prompt, the company strategy could be something that people interact with. They can interact with it, ask questions about it, and apply it to the personal work initiatives that they're working on.
yeah, I think last time you said you had like thousands of pages of context prompts. Have those context prompts gone bigger? Are they longer now?
No, what I've been doing is I've actually been trying to have fewer of them that really matter and trying to keep them up to date.
Mm.
So now there are certain meetings, and for legal reasons, you don't want to. There's a books and records thing too, which is you don't want to keep a lot of transcripts and video recordings around. In the event that litigation comes up, you want to have good hygiene. So there's a data and records thing where generally we don't record any sensitive information. But now what we're doing is we're recording them. We have books and records policies where we'll record them, we'll transcribe it, we'll turn that into a summary, and the design of the summary is designed to be a prompt. It's not really designed for someone to read it. It's designed to be put in as a context prompt. Then we delete all of the source material, and so you're just left with a fairly sanitized context prompt that helps people understand not only like what happened in that meeting, but interact with it. Based on what happened in the meeting, what do I need to know about the project that I'm working on? So that's a lot more of what we're trying to do is find where's the most important context being discussed. How do we keep up to date by recording it and running prompts through it? And then how do we make that available in a responsible way to as many employees as possible?
Fascinating. I could go on talking about this stuff for days. So thank you so much. As always, this has been a truly fascinating conversation. And
Bernard, always great to see you.
likewise, thank you, Jeff.
Okay, take care. Bye-bye.
You too.